Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast, it's Critical Blast.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
And I'm Scott Wakefield, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we talk about comic books and all kinds of great storytelling, sometimes with incredible guests. And we want you to join us Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Yeah,
And yeah.
same thing. I mean, it kind of sucks because these athletes can do these routines so easily if the pressure, but only counts for that one time, and so I think she still competed in the individual. She just stepped out of the team competition.
Yep. All right, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, and I decided to do something a little different. As with many other podcasts that are out there, they kind of lead in from the natural conversations opening. As we're all kind of warmed up, we're talking, the juices are flowing. So I figured we'll see how that went. I feel like it worked well. We're talking a little bit about the Olympics. And, of course, I am joined, as always, by Mr. Aaron Humphreys and Quentin Bedwell. Aaron, who are you? Where can people find you?
I've been trying to figure myself out for years.
Yes, spiritually.
Yeah, tell us your address and phone number, Mr. Aaron.
Address and phone. Yeah, that's right. I saw people stalking me. No, I am the artist on the Fire Rush, which I think we're finishing up the third issues, getting done of the series. I am the artist in the upcoming obsolete title from Silverline, and I am an artist of my own comic, Gollings, which I just posted a new episode on Webtoon today. And I think that covers everything.
I think that's good. Quentin, how about yourself?
Quentin Bedwell, working on Trumps, working on a special project yet to be announced, as well as some other commissions. Have a game on Game Crafter called Relic Quest. It's an open beta. You're welcome to purchase it. Also, I just did a commission for Valaverse for Tony Roberts. You may check him out. It's Analog Toys on YouTube. Really cool guy, ex-Special Forces. Did a piece for him. He's got it on his stuff, and it's getting
awesome.
a lot of attention. So, pretty awesome piece. I enjoyed doing it, but that's about it.
That's awesome. And I am Tim TK, associate editor at Silverline and writer/creator of Wolf Hunter, and amateur kickboxer during training, of which I have messed up my foot, so I am out of it. So this is going to be a shorter show than usual. So hopefully I appreciate your understanding, and after this I'm going to go put my foot very much above my head and try not to bleed out. So tonight we're going to be talking about something that I saw cruise through comics Twitter again, and that is the concept of adult comics, or comics for adults. Not like smut, not like smut or anything, but like
No, what?
But we're gonna talk about a bit like what that terminology exactly means for us, because it even among creators, I mean, for people in any form of art, you have different views on labeling things or how things should be labeled, if they should be labeled, and probably even tap into maybe why the idea of mature or comics with adult themes are not as recognized by your standard fare novel reader who's not perhaps delved too deep into our layers. So I'm going to open up the floor to our Skeletor. I'm going to Oppenheimer Skeletor.
That's the guy who voices him, right?
Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer is the guy who invented the nuclear bomb.
He's also the guy who voices Skeletor.
Yeah, same guy. He does a lot of stuff.
He does a lot of things.
He is just multifaceted. That guy.
I want to see that. I want to see that casting. So I'm going to open up the floor and ask Quentin and Aaron, when you think of comics for adults or mature comics, how exactly do you define that? Is it just, touching on more mature subjects? Is it the inclusion of violence and sometimes graphic material? Is it just perhaps tone? What exactly does that mean to you? Does it mean anything to you, or do you think comics is comics? So I'll open that up and let you guys bring your thoughts first.
And I think when it comes to adult comics, I think sophistication of abstract ideas sometimes. My comic Goblins is written for, I guess, maybe young adults, but it touches on adult themes. So I'm trying to bring more adult themes to young adults and explain them in a way. So my minor in college was philosophy, and so I'm talking about philosophical arguments in my book. My favorite one, I'm talking about fate versus free will. Which is one of my favorite metaphysical arguments. So I'm bringing that down and trying to explain it in layman's terms so people can maybe get interested in it. My comic also deals with the concept of loss. If you read the book and go through it, it deals with people losing things and dealing with that through life. So it deals with some stuff that adults can relate to, but I think my tone and the way I draw works more towards young adult kids. I like young, like 20, early 20-somethings. But I do think that's one of the big things. I think books or comics can talk about sophisticated ideas, and comics can, they just don't a lot. And that to me is a kind of an adult, something that you have to have a little bit of life experience, maybe to understand not so much the concept, but be able to relate to it more.
Yeah.
Like if you read a story about somebody growing old and stuff, older people would relate to that more than somebody younger. And so I think that can also, I don't necessarily think a lot of people still think it's like sex and violence that creates an adult book. And I think that's a lowest common denominator. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's what creates it. But I know people like to think that.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it, at least for now.
I'm a little more simple about it.
I try not to say anything about that, Quentin.
Yep. Let's just let that sit for a second. Now, when I think of adult comics, if we're not talking about, like you say, smut, usually I expect to see more graphic gore, death, more graphic themes like drinking, alcohol, drug use, maybe some innuendo to stuff like prostitution and, just stuff that a lot of times other titles might try to steer clear from. Although, a lot of times I steer clear of adult comics, not because I don't like a more complex story, but just because I don't really care for like sex scenes in comics. It just, I don't know. I just don't really care for it. It doesn't. I could really get your point without you having to draw, panel after panel of. I get it.
You're talking about more graphic sex scenes.
Well, no, I'm talking about just an adult comic that's not even the smut kind, but they throw it in there just because we're doing an adult book,
Yeah.
just for.
So, just out of curiosity, because I'm just curious, you read Sin City, right?
Yes.
Does that bother you?
I didn't really like it.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay, no,
I may
that's
be,
totally fine.
I
was
may
just
be
curious.
like the only person here, but I didn't really care for it. I didn't really care for. There was certain parts of it I appreciated,
Okay.
but for the most part, it was just a little weird to me. That
I think it's just everyone, is looking for something specific in comics and stories. It just may not be your thing. So,
it is.
yeah.
It's not. It's not. I'm pretty straightforward guy. I'm really pretty straightforward with storytelling too. I don't get off mostly into a lot of niche stuff. I just like a good solid story that I enjoy. I don't like for things just to be dark just for the sake of making them dark. Or but I mean, it was okay, but it didn't bother me. But like, I've seen pages here and there where they just went a little too far. I mean, yeah, I'm reading an adult book, but you don't really have to just put certain things in there just because you're doing an adult book.
Yeah.
That's just me. I just, and some people would say, and I have had this argument posed to me, well, you don't mind the violence and the gore and the murder and the killing. Why do you have a problem with women being, I don't know, it's a different thing. It's totally different. But again, I know we're not talking about smut comics, but but if you read enough adult comics, you see those themes kind of, make their way in there.
You still like love stories, though. I mean, like, if a love story is in a comic, like in Star
Yeah,
Wars.
I don't mind an aspect of a comic being, having that, but I don't like for that to be the only thing.
Okay.
Now, if that is the motivation of the character to do stuff that he's doing, I like that, but like, the entire focus of the book is, a love story.
Yeah.
I don't really care for that too much.
Yeah. I'm okay with love stories in my comics. I've read a few of them. It's not my main jam, but if they're done well, it's good. I think I'm kind of on lines with Aaron, where if I'm just reading what is an adult or mature comic or a comic for an adult, I want it to be more on, something more than the power of friendship.
Yeah.
And certainly does have like their place. Like if you're, if it is a kid for kids, you want to make that be kind of a central point. Is like, friendship is good. Elements of discipline or courage or whatever. Refining good ethos. But with a mature comic, I want them to dive more into the gray area of that. Where the difference between like honoring someone and blind obedience, or courage and recklessness, diving into where someone's virtues and flaws kind of become mixed up.
Right.
Yeah. And
yeah, I like all those things. I like all those things. I just, I just think it gets a little raunchy whenever you go into the bathroom.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a mob comic and they're gonna hit, make a hit on somebody in the head. That's a little different. But I just raunchy stuff. I don't,
I am a fan of ultra violence in comics. The occasional like vivisection I'm okay with. But with sex scenes, it's hit or miss, or sometimes I feel like it's well,
I wouldn't mind it as long as it's like a panel,
if
just
it's
to
a panel,
let
if
you
it's
know.
done right, like or even if it's in service of the character or the plot. Where sometimes it does feel like where it's more using people using sex and nudity to sell the idea where like
right.
or something like,
I guess that's what I'm getting at is gratuity.
Like if it's straight up
when it's not gratuitous,
when it's just there to objectify someone. But like that's honestly, I liked Sin City. I felt like that made sense where it's like this dark, gritty, kind of gangster world. Like things are gonna be messy and not clean, and people are gonna be perhaps a little more.
It totally works. It does totally work for Sin City.
But then the opening
that's the kind of book it is.
And the opening of Saga, like the first volume, they had like two one of them was like a full splash. And I'm like,
that was the thing I was gonna bring up too, was the Saga one.
And it didn't feel as important. It felt like I was just there to be like, hey, we got boobs. They said we got boobs.
Yeah, boobies.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah.
It felt like, and I kind of talked about this, I don't know, on one of the streams before, like, when we dropped the Comics Code Authority, it was like we had a bunch of teenagers or something, like, we could show violence and sex, oh boy, and they kind of went ballistic. And some of the stuff where they throw it in there just because they can, now they can because the Comics Code Authority is dropped, we can do this.
Yeah.
And when they drop it in something like Saga, that would be like, the stuff in Saga to me reminds me, if you're watching Star Wars, all of a sudden they cut to Han Solo and Leia doing stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, wait.
This doesn't serve the plot or the characters.
It doesn't serve anything.
It can.
That's what it reminded me of.
Some of the...
There's not... Yeah.
There's definitely some scenes that are like written and drawn where... this is probably going to be more for like the MFA crowd out there, but it feels like the way Bukowski writes women were like when you're like, man, are you lonely? Like, are you good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got it.
When you look at when like R. Crumb does it and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got
go ahead.
We got a question in chat from Cassisi. Hey, Cassisi, another Silverliner. Do you think the lines of what is adult and what is not is blurred now because of nostalgia? And in my own opinion, I don't think it's necessarily blurred as much as aged, in the same way that the Lord of the Rings aged from The Hobbit, where it's written for the same audience, but knowing that your audience is now 10, 20 years older, so coming back and doing She-Ra, for instance, that's the first thing that came to my mind. The themes in the new run are much more in that gray area than originally were, but it can still be more digestible for kids just because of the concept, but it is definitely touching more on themes that the audience who watched it the first time and are now in their 20s and 30s, in 40s in some cases, can watch it again and get something new out of it. So I think it's more just trying to create for the same audience, knowing that your audience has aged for a lot of these reboots and recreations.
I've got a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
Okay,
it is not a comic. It is a cartoon.
Well, it's a what?
It was a cartoon.
Okay.
Castlevania.
Oh.
The new
thoroughly enjoyed that whole thing. I loved it.
Yes.
But when it got down, no spoilers, but they just went too far. Too far. I mean, like, nothing's, they didn't do it the whole show until they got to that one part, and then it's like they made up for it. They slowed it down, and they really got up in there, like, come on, when is this gonna end?
Talking about sex or violence?
Sex, not violence.
They say that show was violent the whole way through, but
yeah. I tried to watch. I watched the first 2 seasons of Castlevania, and the third one was supposed to be the best. And I kept trying to watch it, but this guy just kept having these conversations, and I was just like, this game was just about defeating Dracula in a castle, and you keep having conversations about.
Well, you must not have made it to the part that I was talking about.
I don't think I did. I think I pretty much was like, you know what? Unless you're cracking whips and killing skeletons, I'm kind of out. It was just strange because I'm a big Castlevania fan. I used to have a sticker on my car I made, from vinyl, and I spent 2 seasons like, okay, third season's supposed to be amazing, and I just couldn't get through it, man. I was just bored out of myself, and I feel bad because I mean it's not like it's well written. I think it was just me and the source material. I think if I didn't play the games, it'd be different. But since I was like a big fan of the games, I'm like, it's just not doing it for me. I don't know.
I was all down with it, and I still enjoyed it as a whole. I really liked it, but I think on that one instance, they just kind of, went too far, too long, and I was sitting there watching about 15 minutes of a scene I didn't really care for.
Yeah,
it probably wasn't 15 minutes, but it felt like 15 minutes.
It's funny. I think the best way, a good example of, because you were thinking examples of it, Tim, is like an adult comic to me would be like Appleseed or even Metal Gear.
Oh yeah.
Metal Gear is they're talking about ideas and concepts that you have to have either some research or education into it, and I mean, and Appleseed gets very philosophical, and so does Metal Gear. Both get, and that stuff was cool because I mean they're throwing philosophical arguments into basically action genre. The Matrix did these great.
Yes.
Regardless of what you think of this, I love the whole Matrix, and the people don't like the sequels. Being a philosophy, almost a major as a one class of major, I love the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because I understand, I was like bringing up these questions in the movie was kind of cool and exciting to think about. But yeah, that's kind of what I gear towards more towards adult. Like they're talking about pretty sophisticated ideas that somebody. I mean, when I read Appleseed as a kid, I didn't really get all of it because I didn't get the politics behind what Olympus, when they're trying to do with the island or whatever. The older I got, the more I appreciate it. And it's still one of those books every time I read it, even though it's not complete. Same with Ghost in the Shell. I get something new out of it every time.
Every time.
Which is really cool to me. I mean, that to me is like, okay, this is still challenging me to look at things differently. That's what I consider adult writing. And I think there are comics out there that can do it, but I think a lot of American comics are either too afraid to go there or don't feel they would get the sales.
Yes.
I think, strangely enough, the one American comic that kind of pushed a lot of adult ideas would be the X-Men.
Yeah, I mean, say like, my kids, like, I grew up on X-Men, I love it, and like, if my kids were to read it, that'd be the best thing ever. But I'd probably want them to like stick with like Claremont and Brubaker. I'm not letting them read Hickman's X-Men because they're going to have an existential crisis.
Yeah.
Because as we get to the point where like you're talking about the idea of permanence and individualism versus collectivism, and like finding the middle ground between the both. Like, how much do you are you obligated to help others around you? But does it even matter if everything is finite? Does loyalty matter if everything comes to an end at some point, or should you always try to find like the one way to make it the best way through until that end?
Yeah.
And it's gonna be like, if I read that, I would be like crying because we're like,
I know.
What is the concept of death?
It's not that they're bad. They're just they're somebody who's just been there or wants to entertain those ideas a little more.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's X-Men. It's funny. I get this in a lot of American comics. That American comics is almost afraid to go there.
Yeah.
And I will not pick on comics. I would say this about American media in general.
Yeah.
There's a lot of American media that I think I watched a documentary on stupidity. You can find this. It's a fantastic documentary. But in there, they were talking, and I've known this, but they were saying almost all American media is written to an 8th grade education level.
Yes.
And it's like, that to me is kind of depressing. You would think you would start being more sophisticated, but you see it again and again. Every time I see a movie that I really like that like challenges my way of thinking or seeing things, everybody hates it, and then you see like your basic sort of hero tale, a classic hero tale, and everyone loves it. And it's weird. I guess it's like comfort food, but it seems like people want the same thing fed to them over and over again, and every time you try to challenge that sort of status quo, they balk and fight against it.
Or if you get like the one thing that comes through, it becomes like this like major cultural phenomenon where it'd be very, very like almost street level storytelling elsewhere. Like Breaking Bad became like
Yeah.
that absolutely like talked with the town for like 6 years. But it was very much the style of like a French Noir story that like they
Right.
had been telling for like 60 years.
Yeah, they've been doing that stuff. Like, well, I think, did you read the series Valerian?
Oh yeah. Valerian and Les Infant Miserable. Yes.
Yeah.
Or it's like Les Mis, but it's a Les Infant, but it's about child soldiers who've been
Yeah.
and the whole thing. But yes, I read them at the same time, and that was
It's a lot. Because Valerian gets very sort of esoteric
Yes.
and very philosophical and stuff, and that was one of the most popular things. And I'm not necessarily saying that Americans are dumb. What I'm saying is there's a lot of times it seems like
I feel like we're as a
In the-
culture, it's more bought into its own dogma.
exactly.
Whereas like we didn't have the Enlightenment the same way other cultures did, where it's like, you know what, we're just gonna challenge everything and make that the norm for art.
Mm-hmm. And so this is why sometimes when I know a lot of comic fans, like I'm not a big fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and stuff like that, they are like act surprised, and I'm like, and I guess it just comes down to like I guess I expect more, or maybe not expect, I want more from American comics. And I am amazed out of 22 movies that you literally are seeing the exact same story told 20 times, and every time you come out surprised that it ended that way. That to me is like, look, every time I go into a movie now, I know exactly how it's going to end. And they keep, like I saw the Black Widow and it ended with explosions and stuff running around, things falling out of the sky. Like every other movie ends nowadays. And I'm just like, people come out like, that was amazing. I'm like, you've seen this like how many times? Still amazing. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think it was amazing. I
So-
thought it was a fun time, but yeah, it's definitely it didn't challenge much. So we got some questions in the chat again from Kasisi as well. This is going to be more geared towards craft. Do you guys find that writing or adult comics is boring? I guess put another way, do you choose to write adult comics or do you prefer to writing for other ages? Is there a fear that if you're writing adult comics that you're approaching anime? I mean, personally, as like I guess the only person who's not an artist, I'll speak first. In addition to being a writer, I paint though.
You are an artist. Yeah.
The writing, I definitely try to write. Even though we are like a PG-13 press, I definitely try to write a bit more adult. But sometimes in a way that is approachable. I was always like one of the advanced readers in school, so that's who I want to write to. And I hated the idea of like children's books that felt like they were talking down to me. So I want, especially in Wolf Hunter, it's dealing with the espionage game in World War II, and one of the characters who plays a recurring role that, if the series continues on, will be a bit more pronounced is Churchill. And despite being the man needed at the time, he definitely did some things that were not on the best moral high ground.
Yeah.
And he's definitely...
I mean, let's not touch Stalin on that one, but yeah. Churchill.
Yeah, he made some choices that were interesting and continued to do so even after the war. But and so I kind of want to at least intimate to that, or create some sort of allusion to that. And so already kind of playing with the idea of figures of authority are there for a reason, but how much can you trust them? How much do they trust you? Really, being dealing with a spy novel, you're already dealing with like concepts of like trust and especially since it's not. It's the same way, like it deduces in the same way Sherlock does, where it's a lot of reading in on people, so it deals a lot with like human needs, human wants. How can you infer what someone is doing based on those? So it deals a lot with the concept of like, are we really unique or are we like easily read? Um, how much can you really know about someone? And so like the concepts you can get deeper with, but if you do them right, they can be approachable, and there's probably also some good lessons there for if it was to be more of a children's book to go into. But and I think I don't really have a fear of it being too anime like, because I didn't write it thinking I was going to be like an anime. I wrote it thinking I wanted it to feel like a comic version of a John le Carre or a wow, I forgot the name of the guy who wrote James Bond. But
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
everyone else also brain farted. But I wanted to feel like something like that, but done in a comic form. Or even there's some times where it does feel a bit kind of like maybe a little Nolan-y, not like Dark Knight, but some of his other work, and dealing with like the psychology of all that, and especially dealing with a character in this time who is recently coming from being shot down, so does dealing with some level of PTSD. So there are some elements of his perception that are affected by recent events to him. So how much of it is his perception, how much of it is actually being said or done to him?
Ian Fleming.
Ian Fleming, yes, thank you. So yeah, definitely want to touch on a lot of adult themes. I feel like that's where you get a lot of fun of it, because that's when you really get to know your characters, is writing them to their own age and understanding them where your character would exist naturally. And but I don't think you're going to find yourself really approaching too much to the land of being an anime as much as you are just going to be, unless you are doing a anime style story, which there are elements there, but that you can borrow from. Pacing is different, act structure is a little different. But unless
What do you think? Oh, go ahead.
Unless you actually like seek each one of those things out, I don't think you're going to find that same feel. It's going to just feel like a comic from your own voice, just perhaps with a bit more aged up themes.
Is he saying that, alluding to anime, is like if your stuff approaches anime, that anime is more adult orientated? Is that what he's kind of trying to?
Or at least how anime is perceived in the West as being more adult oriented than traditional cartoons or even American comics, whereas manga may seem a bit more adult oriented.
Yeah, I can see it a little bit. There's a lot of I think, strangely enough, I think sometimes the perception of other, and this could be just my own perception, but a lot of people will see anime or European comics maybe as more adult because they're coming from a different perspective
Yeah,
than
just
people in other countries.
the element
So,
of exoticism.
right. So yeah, the anime is very, because they talk about different ideas of the sawdust, But I mean, Dragon Ball Z is cool, but that's not really adult. I mean, it's WWE of cartoons. I mean, I like Dragon Ball Z too, but I'm like,
Yes.
I'm not going to sit there and lie to somebody like, this is sophisticated storytelling. Like, it's really not. And so those are like Naruto, some of the most popular ones. I think like any medium can become more adult. I I don't necessarily think if you write an adult write or draw an adult sort of comic that it would steer more towards anime. I think there are certain tropes and ideas that make anime and manga what it is,
Mhm.
and I don't think just writing about sophisticated ideas makes it anime
Yeah.
or manga. I think that's a misconstrued perception, because I've read many. I mean, look at the most popular. I mean, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, Naruto. I mean,
Yeah.
these are cool things, but this isn't
Yeah.
like doctorate level, thesis. I mean, so
Yeah.
and it's not meant to be. I mean, and that's fine. So I think that's kind of not a weird, but I think that's interesting. And I'd be the first one. Like, it seems I've read a lot of European comics. Almost half of them make no sense, and
Oh, yeah.
that is just the cultural storytelling between our two countries.
I think some of the joy of it, and I'm not gonna lie, there's some moments of Wolf Hunter that are very European, and they don't necessarily need to make the most sense. I'm like, nope, that's just how I want to tell it.
Yeah, that's just kind of how it goes. I mean, there's many. When they brought out the Valerian movie, which I really liked the Valerian movie, but after seeing it in the theater, I knew right away, like, well, this isn't going to hit in America.
Yeah.
And the reason it's not going to hit in America is because it was told in a very European style of storytelling, which is stuff just randomly happens, and a lot of the stuff that happens doesn't always lead up to some big, conclusion. It's not all interconnected related.
No, it's
just random stuff happens and then it just ends, and that's a very European storytelling. But when it's like, oh, that didn't connect to the American audience, it's like, yeah, I could see that coming a mile away.
Yeah.
But I liked it for what it was.
I know, and I think I also like that a lot in the stories where like I love like what I like from Marvel is the mythology of it. It's all connected. It's all like the story. It's the story of a pantheon. But the European books were like it's the human experience with fantastic intervention. Like I want to read about the human experience.
Right. And there's really, I remember I can't remember what, but like this girl in the comic, when she died, she just bursts into a bunch of ferrets and runs away.
Yep.
And they were like, why did that happen? And it's like, that's just what happens to her. And then you get that all the time in European comics. Like, there's no explanation. She just turns into ferrets.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
Perfect.
I guess you take that for what it was.
Yeah. Because Casey confirmed. Yeah, we're talking about the perception. So I guess we're going to use this to bridge into the like I said, we're not probably not doing a full 2 hours tonight since I am feeling the
Bleeding
need
from the foot.
You're hurt.
I'm bleeding from the foot, and I need to put it up.
Injured.
Remember to always spot your kicks when you're practicing in a Muay Thai gym. I wanted to also kind of talk about how maybe where that American perception comes from, or why even for mainstream novel readers, the idea of comics always come off as being kids books or just teenagers and being for teenagers about dudes in spandex. Why America kind of has that perception, and maybe how you try to combat that on your own. It's kind of thoughts on that whole debacle.
Okay, so I thought about this a lot, like what it comes down to. I think one of the main proponents why this attitude has been so prevalent in America has been because of Disney. And because Disney was the one that really started kind of making cartoons popular. They weren't the first to make cartoons, but they started making cartoons popular. And they made them very family focused, and that's fine. But they were so big and so family focused that people just assumed that's what cartoons were. And no one's ever been able to break that stranglehold over that perception. All cartoons, everything is made family orientated, family friendly. Cartoons are family friendly, all of that. And Japan didn't do that. Now, Japan loves Disney. In fact, manga, I think a lot of you know, is inspired by Walt Disney cartoon drawing. But they just started talking, doing more fantastical and stuff. And they didn't see comics they just saw it like as a medium do multiple genres. When Disney, I think, kind of kept that sort of control where it's like, no, cartoons are kind of almost in a way, not so much our thing, but we're kind of having a monopoly on this sort of genre, and we're really pushing that family oriented because, of course, the more people can see it, the more money it is. Adult cartoon, same thing. Like all movies, the PG-13 instead of rated R, more tickets, and this, comes in the sales.
Yeah.
But I really think, and this is one of the things that really starts to bother me a little bit about, and that's why I have a lot of issues with Disney. That's one. I grew up with Don Bluth too, and I love Don Bluth. He edged more adult in his cartoons.
Yeah.
But Disney just trounced him because it was like, that's why a lot of the Disney stuff I see is even more family saturated and more cookie cutter to me. So it just doesn't do. If you guys, I know a lot of people love it. That's great. That's all your thing. I feel like I'm sometimes being placated to. Like, we'll give you, like, doesn't it make you feel heartwarming and friendly or whatever? It's like, yeah, okay, I've seen this 1,000 times. It's just not my shtick. But I do think it's not so much more of a country as that company has done that and created that persona through. It was like, look, because we started out with comics. We started out with adult comics, EC comics, horror comics, right? And they put that down with that novel, the one about delinquency. He shut that down. And I'm sure part of the reason they shut that down is because the influence of Disney and cartoons should be
Yeah.
family orientated. What are you doing making horror comics? That I cannot. I have no saying that that's true, but I mean, it seems obvious that that was already embedded into the American psyche from Disney, and people took that and saw you're reading horror comics. You're destroying these kids through a medium that is geared towards kids because cartoons are geared towards kids because that's what Disney says.
Yep. Yeah.
That's my take on it. Whether I'm right or wrong, that's how I see it on that.
Well,
At
I
least for-
think the whole founding of PETA was due to Disney humanizing animals and giving them voices and emotions. Top it. Discuss amongst yourselves.
Did you say pedo?
PETA,
Oh, PETA. Oh, yeah. Well, could have been.
animal rights activists, save
Oh,
the
yeah.
whales. It's all because of Disney.
And Disney used to do some. I mean, there's a night on Bald Mountain that was kind of.
There's an argument. Yeah, there's an argument for that.
Yeah. Well, I think even like when Disney did do stuff that was,
pushing the edges.
pushing the edges, like or like would also like bridge with adults. They almost seems like they intentionally sabotaged it by releasing it at like the most inopportune times. I mean, Treasure Planet they released at the same time as Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And Big Hero 6, even though it did well after the fact, that's been kind of perma-canned.
Yeah, Disney will definitely. I've seen them step away. I mean, this is, and again, it's just. I think it just goes down to more butts and seats, the more money we make. So everything's got to be toned down. But toning that down, making sure everyone can enjoy it, is actually bringing down that everything to an 8th grade comprehension level, which it's strange enough is why I tend to stray towards more independent films.
Yeah.
When I try to find films, not saying all those are great, but majority of television out there, it's so hard for me to find something to watch on TV. Like
I'll
usually 10
find like
minutes into
one
everything.
show, and even then, like now, like everything I'm watching is on Amazon, and they killed independent bookstores, but.
Well, I have to say that when I was growing up, and my wife, she watched a lot of Disney, and my daughter as well when she'd go stay with her grandma, because they're big Disney believers. But me, when I was growing up, I haven't done this with my children, but my mom and dad, we watched anything they watched.
Oh yeah.
I was watching Conan when it came out. I was watching Conan the Destroyer. I was watching Terminator. I was watching RoboCop. We didn't even have like a rating system in our house, except for the really, adult stuff. But anyway, so my wife, she's like, we're gonna watch Bambi. I've never seen Bambi. Like I've seen little excerpts of it from my sister's kids whenever they were watching it. But Pinocchio, I've never really seen Pinocchio. So I kind of don't really know, when it comes to Disney stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's like for most people, I mean, it's sacrilege to say that you haven't seen, this or that. They're like, what happened to your childhood? Nothing. I was watching good movies, adult movies.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is I get that all the time. Every time I'm not throwing praise to Disney, I get a lot of people, like especially at Pixar. Like I just get nothing out of Pixar.
I
movies.
tell you that my hat is off to the man, Walt Disney, what he did, what he was able to accomplish, and all that. But of course, now it's big business, and of course he was a businessman as well. But I'd like to take just a moment and mention we still have 4 days to go on our Silverline double feature.
Oh yeah.
Bed number 1, and the Silverline team up of Champion and Miss Fury. And so far we have 2,896 pledged of 4,000. We have 83 backers. We have 4 days to go. So if you're watching this and it's still in time, if you're watching it live or if you're watching it after the fact, you should go over there and
Buy yourself some comics.
look into this. These are some solid artists. Very, very good artists. Very good storytelling. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. And again, as we always say here at Silverline, most of the books you may see on Kickstarter, there's been debacles in the past where people didn't fulfill their orders. We have had, what is it now, Tim and Aaron? 11? And 11 fulfilled.
I think this is the 12th one, yeah.
12 and 12 fulfilled. The books are done before the Kickstarter goes up. The only thing that you are kickstarting or that you are backing is the printing of the books and the distribution of those books. That's all you're doing.
Yep.
Those books are already done. They are ready to go.
Now, you're just pre-ordering at this point. The books are already ready.
Yep. I cannot wait to get Bea. I cannot wait to read that to my two little ones, and they're gonna love it. I know they're gonna love it. And also with Champion, and that's the kind of comics I grew up with, Champion and Miss Fury.
Oh yeah.
And Peter Clinton's art, excellent. Dean Zachary on the alternate covers. Also, there is commissions done by Peter Clinton, and I believe there's some commissions here for Haley as well. Haley Martin, she's the artist of Bea. She's going to be doing some as well. Thomas Floramonte, who inked Champion Miss Fury, he is also going to be doing commissions. I love his work. I've shared it on my page. I'm sure Aaron, Tim, y'all have shared it on y'all's. You should go over there and look at it, because it is like best. It's as good as anything that you're going to find today, and better than most everything you'll find in the independent circle.
Yep. Yeah, and that's something that we kind of mentioned before, but a lot of the old bloods here at Silverline were from Malibu Comics, which was an imprint of Marvel, and they did the Ultraverse, and as well as the Mortal Kombat adaptation that Marvel had the rights to for a little bit there. But they did a lot of the more adult style storytelling for a little bit.
Yep.
You got stuff like Solitaire, which is phenomenal.
I remember that one. I remember the Solitaire book.
Yeah, and for a while, Thor was in the Ultraverse. And there's some really good stuff there that they're not afraid to do that more adult style storytelling. But as you can see there, much like Wu-Tang, we do also make comics for the children.
Yep. We are so diverse in all the things that we do. It's amazing. And as far as the art team and the writers go, as Tim mentioned, them being from Malibu, I was reading Malibu way back in the day. They were ahead on coloring. They were ahead, they had the first titles that I think I read that were adult kind of comics. And, DC was poised to buy them. They were talking about this Sunday. And then Marvel swooped in and ended up purchasing them. So, that tells you the kind of quality. And those creators are now at Silverline.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're worried about what you're going to be picking up, don't. Because if Marvel thought it was good enough back in the day, let me tell you, it's still good enough, and it's still very entertaining.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been our talk on adult comics or comics for adults and more mature themes and the such. We're coming up on the end of the hour. Stephen Brown popped in on YouTube. We're actually wrapping up for the day. I am bleeding from the foot. I am fully bandaged, and I need to put my foot up.
I am about to pass out. I am bleeding now.
Remember, when practicing Muay Thai or really training any type of combat sport, to always spot where you're landing. Otherwise, you will might snap your toe on something you're not supposed to. Luckily, no breakage, just a lot of cut tissue and a super janky toenail.
Well, while you were doing that this week, I was on vacation at the lake.
Perfect.
About 2.5 hours away in Burnett, Texas, which is probably about 40 miles from Austin, something like that.
I was getting your sweat out for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was going to teach my son and my daughter how to fish. So we bought them these little fishing poles, these Zebcos. We got out there to the dock, and I had baited their hooks up and fixed their poles and their lines, fixed mine up. And I was going through the whole spiel, you know, you want to do this, you don't want to do that. And then I got to the part where you were supposed to cast. And, you know, I was saying, now watch me do exactly what I do. Okay, guys? Yeah. Okay, they're watching. And I go to rear back and I said, now see, whenever you do this, you hit the button as you're about to cast it, and then you flick your wrist, just like this. Boom! And as soon as I did that, I threw the fishing pole in the water.
We all did
So
that
there
too,
was
right?
just silence. And the kids were looking at each other, looking at me, and I could see. So the next thing I did, okay, son, don't worry. I got down into the water. I found the fishing pole. Thank goodness.
Very, very much a pro dad move.
Yeah.
it is.
And let me tell you, it took a minute for me to find it, and I thought it was a goner. I went down into the water, got it all the way to the bottom. I was like Aquaman, and
Perfect.
there was no way I would have dredged that lake trying to find that fishing pole because they were so excited to get out there and go fishing. So,
Alrighty.
a little story from the vacation there.
Perfect. Aaron, anything from your weekend?
I don't remember what I did on the weekend.
That is enough said right there, sir.
Just blacked out all entire day.
I don't remember. We know exactly how your weekend went. Just from that statement right there.
See some photos from the Seattle Observer. It's like, is that Aaron hanging from the top of the needle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
There's Aaron in the jail docket. What is he doing there?
Oh no, trust me, I've seen the jail docket. That's what my mother used to work under.
Oof. Alrighty. We are going to be calling it today. This video is going to be up as a VOD on our YouTube channel, which you can watch at any time, as well as on our Facebook. So feel free to join into the conversation later there. Pop in the comments. You may be featured on the website at some point. I've been Tim TK, your host for tonight, writer, creator of Wolf Hunter, coming out Q4 this year, I think. And I've been joined by Mr. Aaron Humphreys.
And you can find me on Facebook under Humphreys Illustration or Aaron Humphreys. Instagram at AOH3810, and then Webtoons, search for Godlings, and you'll find that.
And Mr. Quentin Bedwell.
Quentin Bedwell, you can find me anywhere. I'm omniscient and omnipresent. If you go to your bathroom mirror and say my name 3 times, then I will appear before you, and I will grant you 3 wishes. It would be 3, but we're scaling back because of the COVID. So
2 socially distant wishes.
But if you'd rather go the more, traditional way, you can find me, Quentin Bedwell, on Facebook, or QJB, DeviantArt, GameCrafter.com, Relic Quest, and you can actually just type in Quentin J. Bedwell or Quentin Bedwell Art, and you can Google some of my previous stuff.
Alrighty.
Don't pay attention to some of the stuff you see on there, though. I'm a different man now. I'm no longer, I'm no longer a dancer. So, I don't do that kind of stuff anymore. I straightened up.
All right, and this is gonna be it for tonight. Come back Wednesday for a Wednesday Wham, and again on Sunday for Silver Sunday. We will be here next week Tuesday, probably for the full 2 hours. I do not plan on breaking my other foot, so we should be good. And remember, until then,
Make mine Silverline.
Silverline, feast on your dreams.
Jam.